What happens when the most brilliant inventor of our time discovers a secret that could change the future of humanity, but revealing the truth threatens everything he has built? 4:37. Austin, Texas. Elon Musk opened his eyes 23 minutes before his alarm went off, a habit ingrained by years of running companies that push the boundaries of human technology. In the pre-dawn silence of his minimalist bedroom in Texas, he was already running through his mental to-do list for the day. The launch of a prototype of a new module for Starship, a final briefing before an investor meeting, and of course that ill-fated interview with Global News Network. He reached for his phone. 143 unread messages. A typical morning. Musk swiped his finger across the screen, skimming through his notifications, when an unfamiliar number caught his attention. 3 missed calls, timestamps. 1:24, 2:58, 4:12. Odd. He usually couldn't get through to unknown callers. Too many filters. He was about to ignore them when the phone vibrated in his hand. Same number. Yes, Musk said, automatically activating the call recording function. Mr. Musk? The voice on the other end was tense with a slight Asian accent. This is David Chang. I worked at Tesla until 2023. Advanced Battery Technologies. Musk sat up in bed. Chang. He remembered, a brilliant chemical engineer, one of the best on the solid-state battery team. Gone suddenly without explanation. Chang, I didn't expect you to call so early. Mr. Musk, I don't have much time. Listen carefully. I didn't resign of my own free will. I was forced to resign, and I wasn't the only one. Something in Chang's voice made Musk tense. Continue. Remember Project Edison 2? Experimental batteries with 3 times the energy density of existing ones? Chang spoke quickly, as if afraid of being interrupted. It worked. Totally worked. But we were stopped. Not by Tesla, but by outside forces. Musk got out of bed and walked to the window. The sky over Austin was beginning to brighten. Who stopped you? And why are you calling only now? Because I only now have proof. Chang took a deep breath. It's a consortium, oil companies, traditional automakers, and politicians. They're acquiring and shutting down promising energy startups around the world. I have documents, recordings. Among them is Senator William Sterling. He's the key link. Musk was silent. Sterling, the chairman of the House Energy Committee, the man who would approve a multi-billion-dollar contract for SpaceX. His fate was to be decided today. Mr. Musk, are you there? Why are you telling me this, Chang? Because today they are launching the final phase. At a closed committee meeting, Sterling will present a new energy strategy that will completely block the development of alternative energy for the next decade. Electric cars, solar energy, everything will be controlled and limited. Tax breaks will be canceled, and environmental requirements will be relaxed for traditional producers. Musk felt a familiar tingle in the back of his neck, the same sensation he got before making some of the riskiest decisions in his life. How do you know about the meeting? I still have contacts in the industry. People don't like what's going on. Someone decided you should know. Through the window, Musk watched the first rays of sunlight begin to appear on the horizon. He remembered why he had started working on electric cars and solar energy. Not for the money. He had plenty of that after PayPal. For the future. To change the trajectory of humanity. To make it more sustainable. And now, according to Chang, someone was deliberately trying to shut it down. Send me everything you've got, Musk said firmly. And be careful. If it's as you say, I've already sent the files to your private server. The password is the name of the first Falcon prototype, the one that never flew. Chang's voice was nervous. I have to go. I'm being followed. Chang, where are you now? It doesn't matter. The main thing is that you have an interview today, right? With Christine Parker? This is your chance. They can't drown you out on live television. The call was cut off. Musk stood by the window, looking out at the dawn sky. His thoughts were racing. If Chang was telling the truth, then everything he had worked for over the past 20 years was at stake. But if it was a lie or an exaggeration, and he publicly confronted Sterling, he activated the secure server via his personal tablet. Access required a password. The name of the first Falcon prototype, the one that never flew. Musk entered. Blue steel. The screen lit up green, and a file folder opened. Dozens of documents, audio recordings, emails. Musk opened the first PDF, an internal presentation from the world's largest oil company. A strategy for long-term market position in an alternative energy environment. The table of contents included a section, Proactively Countering Competitive Technologies. Musk's eyes widened as he scrolled down to the names of companies listed as high-priority threats. Tesla was at the top of the list. He opened an audio file labeled Sterling Exxon 2022. A voice that sounded like the senators said, 20% offshore as usual. Just make sure this bill doesn't pass. We can't afford another tax break for charging stations. Musk's heart began to beat faster. The vast majority of people had no idea how thin the line was between the world as it was and the future that might have been, if not for the resistance of entrenched interests. He knew about that resistance, of course. He had felt it every time Tesla ran into inexplicable regulatory hurdles or when traditional automakers received government support despite their reluctance to go green. But it was one thing to suspect, quite another to have evidence of a systemic conspiracy. Musk's phone rang again. The screen read, Andrew Carter, SpaceX, government contracts. Elon, good morning. Sorry for the early call, but I have great news. Preliminary information from my source on the Sterling Committee. They're ready to sign. 17 billion, Elon. Everything we asked for. They'll announce it after the meeting today. Musk was silent, looking at the rising sun. $17 billion. Funding that would allow SpaceX to accelerate its Mars program by years, perhaps a decade. His dream of a multiplanetary humanity was getting closer to reality. Elon, are you there? Yes, thank you, Andrew. Good news. Good news? That's great news. I've already opened the champagne. There's just one thing. Sterling wants you to be, well, more reserved in the interview today. No controversial statements, especially about oil, energy, and climate. You know, the usual political rubbish. But for 17 billion, it's worth it, right? Musk felt his stomach clench. This was it. The choice. Of course, he replied in an even voice. I'll be a professional. Excellent. I knew I could count on you. Good luck with the interview and see you at the celebration tonight. The call ended. Musk looked at his reflection in the glass. The man who had become the richest man in the world by proving time and time again that the impossible was possible. The man who had put his entire fortune on the line to pursue dreams no one else believed in. The man whose companies had redefined what an individual with enough determination could do. What was that reputation worth if he backed down now? But on the other hand, Mars, colonization, the chance to make humanity a multiplanetary species, to ensure it against extinction. Wasn't that his main mission? And wasn't it worth compromising for? The tablet screen still showed Chang's documents. Musk opened the next file, a list of engineers and scientists who needed containment. His own name was at the top. The phone rang again. This time it was his assistant. Good morning, Elon. Let me remind you that in 2 hours you are expected in the Global News Network studio. Christine Parker has prepared a list of topics for discussion. Mostly standard questions about new projects from Tesla and SpaceX, a little bit about social media, and your recent tweet about artificial intelligence. Nothing unexpected. Musk looked up from his tablet at the view outside. The sun was fully up, lighting up the Texas hills. Somewhere out there, a few miles away, was Tesla Gigafactory Texas, the massive electric car and battery-making complex that was the embodiment of his vision of the future, a future that was now under threat. Elon, everything okay? Rearrange my schedule, Musk said, his voice taking on a different tone now, with the steely determination his employees recognized as a sign of things to come. After this interview, I want to have an emergency meeting with the heads of Tesla and SpaceX and prepare the legal department. We could have a busy day. Did something happen? Perhaps today we will change the course of history. He ended the call and walked quickly to the bathroom. He had a video conference with engineers in an hour, and there was a lot to think about before it. Musk turned on the shower, letting the hot water wash away the fatigue of a sleepless night. His mind was already calculating options, assessing risks, formulating strategies. He knew that if Chang's documents were genuine, today would be the day his life would be divided into before and after. By going against Sterling and the consortium, he would be jeopardizing not just the SpaceX contract, but the entire ecosystem of his companies. The stock would fall, investors would panic, regulators would investigate. They would try to destroy him, as they had tried so many times before, only with much greater force. But if he keeps quiet, if he lets them carry out their plan. Musk closed his eyes. Images flashed through his mind. Endless fields of solar panels covering deserts, electric cars gliding silently through city streets, clear skies without smog, homes powered by their own roofs. The future he was trying to create, a future that would die if people like Sterling won. But there was another image, the red surface of Mars, the first human settlements under domes, a new frontier for civilization, a dream that could become reality with 17 billion government dollars, a dream that would be delayed for decades if he opposed the consortium. Musk turned off the shower, dried himself off, and looked at himself in the mirror. 52 years old. For most people, that's the age when they start thinking about retirement, about slowing down. For him, it's just the middle of the road. What would a true innovator do? He asked himself. What would the person I want to be do? The answer came immediately, although he already knew it as soon as he saw Chang's documents. Musk dressed quickly, opting for a sharp dark blue suit instead of his usual t-shirt and jeans. Today he had to look invulnerable. Back in his home office, he sat down at his computer and began reviewing the remaining documents from Chang. Each new file confirmed his worst fears, a systematic conspiracy to delay the transition to renewable energy, bribes to politicians, secret funding of campaigns to discredit green energy, industrial espionage against innovative startups. And everywhere the name of Senator Sterling appeared, the man who today would offer him $17 billion in exchange for silence. There was a knock at the door. His personal driver, Mr. Musk, the car's ready. We leave in 15 minutes to make it to the studio. Thanks, Ray. I'll be there in a minute. Musk closed the files and took a deep breath. He had made many risky decisions in his life. He had invested the profits from the sale of PayPal into a rocket company when everyone thought it was crazy. He had brought Tesla to the brink of bankruptcy only to take it to the next level. He had repeatedly challenged established industries and proven that the future could arrive faster if someone was persistent enough. But today's decision may have been the most difficult. It wasn't about money. It wasn't about technology. It was about choosing between two dreams, a clean Earth and humanity on Mars. His phone vibrated, a message from an unknown number. They came to my apartment. I'm safe, but barely got away. The documents are authentic. They're scared, Musk. They're afraid you already know. Good luck today. Musk glanced at his watch. The interview was 2 hours away. Sterling's committee meeting was 5 hours away. He had precious little time to prepare for what might be the most important speech of his life. He walked out of the house and climbed into the waiting electric car. The sun had risen fully over Austin, promising a clear and hot Texas day. To the Global News Network studio, he told the driver, and the car moved silently away. Musk took one last look at the documents on his phone, then leaned back and closed his eyes. The walk from his home to the TV station took 40 minutes. 40 minutes to prepare for the battle that would determine the future of not just his companies, but perhaps the entire planet. Calm down, Elon, he told himself. You've done the impossible before. It's just another impossible day. But somewhere deep inside he knew this day would be different from all the previous ones. Because today he had to make a choice not between success and failure, but between two versions of himself. And on this choice depended what kind of person he would wake up tomorrow. The truth always looks like madness until it becomes obvious to everyone. 9:43. Global News Network Studios, Austin. The GNN building stood like a glass monolith in Austin's business district, 40 floors of polished perfection and corporate might. Elon Musk walked in through a side entrance, avoiding the throng of journalists at the main entrance. He was met by a young assistant with a tablet and an earpiece talking to him and someone else on the comms. Mr. Musk, welcome to GNN. My name is Emily. I will show you to the dressing room. Christine is already here. She would like to talk to you before the broadcast about the format of the interview. Musk nodded, following the girl through the labyrinthine corridors of the TV studio. Chang's documents were still playing in his head, like stills from a thriller. He barely noticed the bustle around him, the technicians adjusting equipment, the producers loudly discussing the order of news stories, the interns serving coffee. Emily stopped in front of a door with a sign that said VIP. Please make yourself comfortable. The makeup artist will be here in 5 minutes, and Christine right after him. The interview will begin at exactly 10:30, live to the entire country. After the assistant left, Musk was alone. He walked over to the mirror, looking at his reflection. The conversation with Chang that morning echoed in his head. This is your chance. They can't shut you down on live TV. Musk's phone vibrated. A message from SpaceX, Director of Government Contracts. Just spoke with Sterling. He's watching the interview. Said he trusts you to be reasonable. The contract is in the bag. Just don't make any bold statements. Musk exhaled slowly. They weren't even hiding. $17 billion for silence. A deal with the devil, dressed up in the language of business and politics. The door opened and a makeup artist entered, a thin man with a professional set of cosmetics. Mr. Musk, I'll just be a couple of minutes. I just need to get the shine off my face for the cameras. While the makeup artist worked, Musk scrolled through the latest news on his phone. Nothing about a conspiracy. Nothing about Sterling and his ties to oil companies. Nothing about the fate of alternative energy being decided. The usual information noise, celebrities, political scandals, sports results, and behind the scenes, real history was being made. Done, Mr. Musk. You look great. The makeup artist left, and a minute later the door opened again. Christine Parker, a 38-year-old GNN star known for her tough interviews with politicians and businessmen, stood there. Tall, with impeccable posture and piercing green eyes, she radiated the energy and confidence of a seasoned predator of the information field. Elon Musk, she smiled, walking in and extending her hand. Finally, we meet in person. Thank you for agreeing to this interview. Christine, Musk nodded, shaking her hand. Nice to meet you. Parker sat down opposite him, placing her tablet next to her. We have about 20 minutes left before the broadcast, so let's quickly go over the format. Live, 45 minutes, national broadcast. The main topics, new Tesla projects, SpaceX launches, your forecast for the development of artificial intelligence, and of course, you as a person, something that always interests the audience. Musk looked at the reporter carefully. Christine Parker had a reputation for being unafraid of tough questions, but also not simply seeking to stir up trouble for ratings. She was a professional who valued truth and depth of analysis. Perhaps she was the person who needed to hear what he had to say. That sounds reasonable, he replied. But perhaps I'll have something to add beyond this list. Parker raised an eyebrow. Oh, something new that we don't know about yet? Let's put it this way. Musk paused. This morning I received information that may change your interview scenario. A new product? Parker's eyes took on a professional look. Or something more personal? Something that concerns the future of energy. And not only. Parker studied his face carefully. Sounds intriguing and potentially explosive. Maybe. You know, Elon, she leaned forward slightly, I have a rule. I never ask guests to tell me everything they want to talk about in advance. Real conversations happen when there's an element of surprise. But, she held up a finger, I have to warn you, anything you say live on air will remain in history, forever, without the ability to edit. Musk nodded. That's exactly why I'm here. Something in his tone made Parker freeze for a moment. She was too experienced a journalist not to sense when an interview was going to be historic. Well, she said, standing up, I'll see you in the studio in 15 minutes then. And, Elon, whatever it is, I appreciate your willingness to speak on my platform. After Parker left, Musk checked the documents on his phone again. He also activated a special security protocol that his IT specialists had developed. All of Chang's files were automatically uploaded to a secure server, accessible only to trusted Tesla and SpaceX employees. If something went wrong, the evidence would not disappear. Musk's phone vibrated again. A message from an anonymous number. They know you have the documents. Be careful. It's not just money at stake. Musk felt the adrenaline begin to pulse through his veins. The same feeling he got before rocket launches or big presentations. The sense of the moment when things could go phenomenally well or catastrophically badly. Emily looked through the door. Mr. Musk, it's time to go to the studio. The GNN studio was impressive in its scope. A huge space with several shooting zones, massive cameras on cranes, dozens of monitors, and a maze of cables on the floor. In the center was the main interview platform. 2 chairs and a coffee table against the backdrop of a panoramic screen with the channel's logo. The low hum of voices in the studio died down as Musk walked in. All eyes turned to him. Cameramen, lighting technicians, producers. To them, this was just another celebrity interview. But Musk knew that in an hour, everything could change. Christine Parker was already sitting in her chair, looking over her notes. When she saw Musk, she smiled and pointed to the chair across from her. 2 minutes until broadcast, the director announced. Musk sat down, taking the microphone from the sound engineer. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw the production assistant whisper something quickly into Parker's ear, but her face remained impassive. 30 seconds. The final preparations. The cameraman checked the focus. The makeup artist made the final touches. The studio audience fell silent. 10 seconds. 5, 3, 2, 1. The red indicator on the main camera lit up. Good afternoon, America. I'm Christine Parker, and today we have a very special guest in the GNN studio. A man who has changed the way we think about what's possible in technology, business, and space exploration. Elon Musk, CEO of Tesla and SpaceX, is one of the most influential and controversial entrepreneurs of our time. Elon, thank you for joining us. Thank you for the invitation, Christine. Let's start with the latest news. How is the Starship project going? The last launch looked impressive, but we are still waiting for the orbital return flight. Musk smiled, slipping into his usual role as a technological visionary. Starship is progressing on schedule. We have solved most of the heat shield issues that were observed in previous tests. I expect that by the end of the year, we will see the first full orbital return flight. This will be a revolutionary moment, a fully reusable rocket system capable of delivering cargo to Mars. Parker nodded. What about colonizing Mars? Is that still your long-term goal? Absolutely. Making humanity a multiplanetary species is not just a business goal. It's a necessity for the long-term survival of our civilization. Musk paused, his gaze briefly becoming more distant. But sometimes we need to make sure we're solving problems here on Earth correctly before we go to the stars. That's an interesting twist, Parker said. Let's talk about earthly issues. Tesla continues to be the leader in electric vehicles, but competition is growing. Chinese manufacturers, traditional automakers, everyone is actively developing electric lines. How do you assess Tesla's position now? Musk sat up straight in his chair. It was a moment of choice. Continue with the standard interview or start talking about what really matters. You know, Christine, he said, looking directly into the camera, I received information this morning that has made me rethink not only the future of Tesla, but the entire energy industry. There was a momentary silence in the studio. Parker froze, sensing that the interview had just veered into uncharted territory. This sounds serious, Elon. What information are we talking about? On evidence of a systematic conspiracy to slow down and ideally completely stop the development of alternative energy. Parker blinked but quickly regained her professional expression. That's a big statement. Are you talking about a specific company or organization? I'm talking about a consortium of major oil companies, traditional automakers, and, most worryingly, senior politicians working together to sabotage the transition to sustainable energy. Parker heard the executive producer's worried voice in her earpiece. Christine, we didn't prepare for this. Bring the conversation back to the scheduled topics. But the journalist ignored the instruction. Her instincts screamed that this could be the most important moment of her career. Do you have any evidence to support these statements, Mr. Musk? Yes, Musk replied simply, and I'm willing to provide them. There was a noticeable stir in the studio, producers whispering among themselves, the director nervously signaling to Parker, but she was completely focused on her guest. Can you be more specific? Who is part of this consortium, as you call it? Musk thought for a moment. The point of no return. After these next words, there would be no turning back. Central to this scheme is Senator William Sterling, chairman of the House Energy Committee, the man who, in a few hours today, will unveil a new national energy strategy that will effectively block the development of renewable energy for years to come. In Parker's earpiece, the producer's voice grew panicked. Christine, stop this immediately. We cannot broadcast baseless accusations against the senator. Change the subject, now. But Parker, with a slight smile, took out the earpiece and placed it on the table in front of her. There were gasps of surprise in the studio. Go on, Mr. Musk. What exactly is Senator Sterling planning? Today, at a closed meeting of the committee, a package of regulatory measures will be presented, which under the pretext of energy security, will actually destroy economic incentives for the development of solar, wind energy, and electric transport. Tax incentives will be canceled. Certification requirements will be tightened for new players, and environmental standards, on the contrary, will be relaxed for traditional energy companies. And most importantly, these same companies will be allocated tens of billions of dollars allegedly for environmental modernization, which in fact is a fiction. And you claim that this is part of a conscious plan? I have internal documents and conversation recordings that leave no room for doubt. This is a coordinated campaign that began many years ago when it became clear that alternative energy was becoming economically competitive. Parker's face remained professionally impassive, but Musk saw a mixture of shock and admiration in her eyes. These documents, can you share them with our audience? Musk pulled out his phone and showed the camera a screen with an open file, an internal presentation from an oil company. Here, for example, is the strategic plan of one of the world's largest oil corporations. I quote, "The priority task is to discredit the economic viability of renewable energy sources through controlled media channels and loyal political allies." And here is a list of companies that they consider existential threats to their business. Tesla is at the top. The camera captured the document in close-up. The director panicked and signaled the cameraman to change the angle, but it was too late. Millions of viewers had already seen the document's headlines. There was a real commotion in the studio. The program director was shouting something furiously into the phone. The producers were running between the technicians, and the studio door swung open. A man in a formal suit entered, clearly a representative of the channel's top management. But Parker, seemingly oblivious to the chaos, continued the interview with unwavering professionalism. Mr. Musk, these are extremely serious allegations. How did you get these documents? From a man who witnessed the scheme firsthand, an engineer who was forced to leave when his designs became too effective. And he is not the only one. Dozens of brilliant scientists and engineers were forced to curtail their research under pressure from this consortium. And what role does Senator Sterling play in this? The key one. He is the main political operator of the scheme, receiving millions through a complex network of offshore companies and consulting services after leaving the political arena. But the most interesting thing is that today he is going to offer me a deal. A deal? Parker leaned forward. $17 billion in government funding for SpaceX in exchange for my silence on energy policy. Money that, by the way, I would very much like to receive for the development of the Mars program. The man in the suit, who had been watching the scene with growing horror, finally approached Parker and whispered something in her ear. She nodded. Mr. Musk, I was just informed that the channel's management requires that we interrupt the interview for a commercial break. It's an amazing coincidence, isn't it? Musk smiled. Just when we started talking about real power, someone decided that the American people needed to see a toothpaste commercial. Parker couldn't help but smile, despite the seriousness of the situation. Mr. Flannery, she said to the man in the suit, please remind me what clause in my contract says that the CEO can interrupt live television? Christine, this is not up for discussion, Flannery said sternly. The interview is suspended. Now. Parker looked directly into the camera. Dear viewers, it looks like our conversation with Elon Musk has caused some excitement among the channel's management. But before we get cut off, I have one more question. She turned to Musk. Why did you decide to talk about this now? Risking everything. SpaceX contracts, reputation, maybe even safety. Musk thought for a moment, then answered, looking not at Parker but directly into the camera. Because sometimes there comes a time when you have to choose between what is profitable and what is right. I have built companies that are changing the world because I believe that technology could make the future better. But the system is working against this future. And to remain silent is to become part of the problem. Turn off the cameras, Flannery shouted. Today, Senator Sterling is going to try to bury the future of clean energy. Musk continued, his voice growing more passionate. And I could just take his money and focus on Mars. But what's the point of building a new world if we can't fix this one? The red light on the main camera suddenly went out. The broadcast was interrupted. What have you done? Flannery hissed at Parker. Do you realize the problems you've just caused for the channel? I was doing my job, she replied calmly. Covering the news. What journalism is for. That's not news, that's unfounded accusations. Flannery countered, then turned to Musk. And you, Mr. Musk, just made a serious mistake. Senator Sterling is not a man to be trifled with. Musk stood up, removing the microphone. Who said I was joking? At that moment, his phone vibrated. Musk looked at the screen and smiled. Well, it looks like the Americans don't agree with your assessment of the situation, Mr. Flannery. The hashtag #MaskExposed is already trending worldwide on Twitter. And here are the first publications based on the documents that I sent to journalists from 10 major publications right during our conversation. Flannery turned pale. You don't understand the forces you've gotten involved with, he said quietly, but with a threat in his voice. On the contrary, Musk replied, looking him straight in the eye. I understand them perfectly, and that's why I'm here. He turned to Parker and handed her the flash drive. Here are all the documents, conversation records, and evidence I spoke of. I assume your channel will decide not to continue the broadcast, but perhaps you will find a use for them elsewhere. Parker took the drive. Their eyes met for a moment, and Musk saw in her eyes what he felt himself, determination and freedom from fear. This is the end of your career, Flannery Parker said. Or the beginning of it, she replied, clutching the flash drive. The real beginning. Musk headed toward the studio exit but stopped at the door. By the way, Mr. Flannery, tell your bosses and their friends in the oil companies. You can interrupt the broadcast. The truth? No. He walked out of the studio into the corridor, where his security was already waiting. His phone was vibrating with notifications. The whole world was already talking about the interrupted interview. The first journalists began publishing materials based on the documents sent to them. Social networks were exploding with theories and discussions. And somewhere in Washington, Senator William Sterling was probably watching the same interview and realizing that his carefully crafted plan had just been blown up on live national television. As Musk exited the GNN building through the back door, he saw a crowd of journalists and regular people already gathering at the front entrance, drawn by news of the sensational interview. "Where to now, sir?" the driver asked, opening the door of the electric car. Musk looked up at the sky. Clear, blue, endless. The sky that would one day be a path to the stars. But first he had to finish the battle here on Earth. "To the SpaceX office," he replied. "We have a lot of work to do." The car pulled away, leaving behind the TV station where the story had only just begun. The true scale of the storm Musk had just unleashed was yet to be seen. But the choice had been made, not between Earth and Mars, but between truth and silence. And Elon Musk, the man who built an empire by daring to do the impossible, just took what may be the boldest step of his life. Secrets in the digital age are like paper airplanes in a hurricane. 11.7. SpaceX office, Austin. Musk's secretary looked like she had seen a ghost when he walked into her office. "Mr. Musk? What? What happened? The phones are ringing off the hook. Sterling's representatives have called 6 times in the last 15 minutes. Musk walked past her with a half smile that looked both tired and determined. "Jen, call an emergency meeting of Tesla and SpaceX executives. Virtual in 20 minutes. And connect me with our legal department. Immediately." In his office, Musk glanced at the wall-mounted TV. GNN was still showing commercials as if nothing had happened. He switched to other channels, the same standard daytime programming. No sign of the earthquake he had just caused. At least not yet. The phone in his hand exploded with notifications. Twitter, Instagram, email, instant messaging. The digital floodgates were bursting. He opened Twitter. The hashtag #NarShirtMaskExposed shot to the top of the global trends. Millions of reposts, thousands of tweets per minute. OMG! Just saw Musk get turned off on live TV when he started telling the truth about oil companies. Has anyone recorded the full interview? GNN is removing clips from YouTube. It's official. GNN claims technical glitches during Musk interview. Yes, right when he was talking about corruption. Coincidence? Mask exposed. The office door swung open without a knock. In walked Amanda Hope, SpaceX's head of legal, a sharp woman with a short haircut and a look that could freeze lava. "Are you crazy?" she asked without preamble. "You just accused a United States senator of corruption on national television." Musk looked up calmly from his phone. "Amanda, as always, it's good to see you. This is no time for jokes, Elon. Sterling is preparing a $100 million libel suit against you, and his lawyers have already called and hinted at possible criminal consequences for spreading false information." "False?" Musk handed her his phone with an open folder of documents. "See for yourself." Hope picked up the phone, her face changing as she read, from professional skepticism to disbelief to cold anger. "Oh my God, is this real?" she asked, looking at an oil company presentation. "Absolutely. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. I have sent the full set of documents to 40 journalists around the world. Right now, they are fact-checking, preparing their publications." Hope shook her head. "You could have warned your lawyers before going to war against the energy cartel and corrupt politicians. Would you allow me to do this?" Hope opened her mouth, then closed it. They both knew the answer. "Exactly," Musk nodded. "It was a necessary risk. The only way to break the system was to do it in a way that they couldn't react to." The phone on Musk's desk rang. "Yes," he replied, turning on the speakerphone. "Mr. Musk, this is Brian from Information Security. We have a problem. Since your interview, we have been recording massive attempts to penetrate our network. Someone is very interested in gaining access to our servers." "As expected," Musk said, "activate the Red Dragon protocol. Complete isolation of critical systems." "It's already done, sir. But there's one more thing. We've received information that the police have arrived at David Chang's house with a search warrant. Officially, it's an investigation into industrial espionage." Musk and Hope exchanged glances. "They're fast," Musk muttered. "Where's Chang now?" "He's in a safe place, sir. He sent a message through a secure channel. But you should know, they're using all levers, including the law enforcement system." "Thanks, Brian. Keep me posted." Musk turned to a large screen on the wall of his office, which displayed a news feed from various sources. Fox News had the first report on the controversial interview, with a perfectly coiffed anchor reading an official statement from Senator Sterling's spokesman. "Mr. Musk's irresponsible and completely false accusations are clearly an attempt to distract attention from the financial problems of his companies." "How ironic," Musk chuckled, "using Fox to launch a counterattack first." "They're going to be pushing on all fronts," Hope said. "Tesla shares are already falling, down 8% in half an hour." Musk shrugged. "I've seen worse. Remember 2018, when I wrote that tweet about privatization? That's different, Elon. Then you were taking on the SEC. Now you're taking on the entire energy industry and part of the government. Speaking of government, Musk picked up his phone and opened the message that had arrived a minute ago. It was from Andrew Carter, SpaceX's head of government contracts. The message was one line: Sterling has canceled the contract vote. Officially, additional review required. Unofficially, we're screwed. $17 billion had just evaporated. Musk felt a twinge of regret. That money could have brought his Mars dream a lot closer. But the decision had been made. The contract is frozen, he told Hope. She sighed. We could try. She was interrupted by a sharp notification from Musk's phone. Then another, and another, and another. Musk looked at the screen. It was the Washington Post, the first major publication to publish a story based on the documents. Investigation. Documents reveal massive conspiracy against renewable energy. He opened the article. The journalists had worked quickly. They had already verified the authenticity of several key documents through comments from former employees of the companies in question. The article detailed a scheme in which oil giants, automakers, and politicians, including Senator Sterling, had systematically worked to undermine the development of alternative energy. It's begun, Musk said quietly. A few seconds later, his phone received an incoming video call. The caller's name was Senator William Sterling. Hope gave a warning look. Don't answer. Let everything go through the lawyers. But Musk had already pressed the accept button. The face of Senator Sterling appeared on the screen. A 62-year-old man with graying temples and eyes that had spent years watching the world from political billboards. Now those eyes radiated a cold fury. Musk, Sterling said without greeting. Do you realize what you just did? Completely, Senator, Musk replied calmly. The question is, do you understand what you've been doing all these years? Sterling's face tightened, but he quickly regained control. I offered you a mutually beneficial partnership, a historic contract for your space company. Instead, you decided to start a war you can't win. I saw no other choice. Your energy initiative package would have effectively destroyed the industry we had spent decades building. It's politics, Musk. That's how the real world works. Compromises, balance of interests. Do you think oil and gas can just be turned off with a snap of the fingers? Millions of jobs, a stable economy. All of this depends on a smooth transition. Don't lie, Senator, Musk replied coldly. I've seen the paperwork. Your smooth transition is designed to last 40 years instead of the possible 10. During that time, the planet will get a few more degrees of warming, and your sponsors will get a few more $1 trillion in profit. Sterling leaned forward, his voice becoming quieter and more dangerous. Listen to me carefully, Musk. You have 1 hour to issue a rebuttal. Say that your accusations were based on false information, that you overreacted, apologize to the American people for creating panic, and then perhaps we can minimize the damage. For all of us. Or what? Or you'll see what happens when you go against the system. Your companies, your reputation, your dreams of Mars, all of it can disappear very quickly. One call to the SEC about market manipulation, one investigation by the IRS, one congressional hearing about the security of your technology. Are you sure you're ready for that? Musk stared at the screen with an unreadable expression. You know what's interesting, Senator? 10 years ago, those threats might have worked, but the world has changed. Information flows freely now. And by the way, he held up his phone, showing the screen to Sterling. The Washington Post just published its first story with your documents. CNN, Bloomberg, and the New York Times will be out within the hour, and I'm afraid you're in bigger trouble than I am. Sterling's face twitched. You are making a mistake that will cost you everything. Maybe, but it could also save the future of clean energy. And you know what? It's worth it. Musk ended the call and turned to Hope, who had been watching the conversation with a mixture of horror and fascination. He wasn't kidding about retaliation, she said. They're going to mobilize all their resources against us. Then we need to mobilize ours, Musk replied. Time to start the virtual meeting. And Amanda, thank you for being here. We're going to need all of our best people today. Hope nodded and walked out of the office, leaving Musk alone to face the approaching storm. He glanced at the wall-mounted TV, which was now showing CNBC. The headline at the bottom of the screen read, Tesla stock dropped 12% after Musk's controversial interview. The host was discussing with experts the possible financial impact of the conflict with Senator Sterling. Musk switched to CNN. Here the situation was different. The headline, Documents Prove Musk's Claim, Energy Conspiracy Exposed. The studio was in the midst of a heated discussion among journalists, energy experts, and political commentators. If these documents are genuine, and everything points to that, We are dealing with the biggest corporate political scandal in decades, said the gray-haired energy expert. Sorry, but let's not jump to conclusions, countered a woman in a suit, a spokeswoman for an oil industry-funded think tank. We're seeing fragments of documents taken out of context that could mean something completely different. Out of context? The journalist interrupted. I just received a full report marked strictly confidential that spells out in black and white the need to neutralize public support for solar energy through controlled media channels. What more context do you need? Musk's phone was buzzing nonstop. He opened Twitter and saw that Tesla's account had gained 1 million new followers in the last hour. People wanted to hear his position directly, without the middleman. Musk took a deep breath and began typing. Today I have disclosed information about a conspiracy that threatens the future of renewable energy. I did not do this to create a scandal, but because the truth is more important than political games. All documents are authentic, verified, and are already in the hands of journalists around the world. I am ready to answer for every word I say, including legal liability. This is not an attack on the oil industry per se. It is an exposé of those who deliberately block inevitable and necessary progress in energy. There are no financial interests or personal ambitions behind today's decision. Only the certainty that humanity deserves a better future, a clean future that is already technologically possible. Yes, SpaceX lost a government contract today. Yes, Tesla will face new obstacles, but some battles are worth any price. He clicked publish and almost instantly saw the post begin to spread across the web. Thousands of reposts per minute. At that moment, the office door opened again. His assistant Jen walked in, a worried expression on her face. Mr. Musk, the virtual meeting is about to begin. All executives are online, and you might want to take a look at this. She handed him a tablet with a New York Times page open. The leading publication had just published its own investigation, based on Musk's documents but supplemented by its own sources. The headline read, Exposed. Documents reveal a decade-long campaign to discredit renewable energy. Experts confirm authenticity. The headline featured a photo of Senator Sterling shaking hands with the CEO of a major oil company at a private event. This is a turning point, Jen, Musk said quietly. Today we will find out if truth really has power in our world. She nodded, her eyes showing a mixture of concern and pride for her boss. By the way, Musk added, what about Christine Parker from GNN? Any news? She's been fired, sir, officially for violating the channel's editorial policy. GNN issued a statement that your interview was cut short due to technical issues and that they were investigating violations of journalistic standards. Musk shook his head. Predictable. Contact her on my behalf. Offer her the position of Director of Communications at Tesla, with complete creative freedom. Jen smiled. Immediately, sir. Musk walked to his desk, preparing for a virtual meeting. Waiting on his computer screen were the faces of his company's leaders, the people who had co-created the future with him and who now found themselves in the eye of the storm. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, we are in a difficult situation. You have all probably seen my interview and its aftermath. Let me be clear. This was my personal decision, and I take full responsibility for any negative consequences for our companies. He paused, expecting a wave of outrage or panic. Instead, he saw something unexpected on the faces of his top managers. Determination and support. Elon, said Robin Denholm, Tesla's chairman, I speak for the entire board. We are with you. This is a fight worth fighting. Absolutely, said Gwynne Shotwell, president of SpaceX. We lost the government contract? No problem. We'll find other sources of funding. Private investors are already lining up to support us. Tesla has been through worse storms, added Drew Baglino, senior vice president of energy development. And what you said about blocking technology? That's 100% true. We've been dealing with this for years. We just never said it publicly. The support was unanimous. All the executives who had built Musk's innovation empire with him stood by his side at this critical moment. Thank you, Musk said, a hint of excitement creeping into his usually controlled voice. Now let's discuss our plan of action, because they're hitting on all fronts, and we need to be prepared. The meeting lasted an hour. They developed strategies to counter possible attacks on the companies, plans for communicating with shareholders, and preparations for potential lawsuits. Musk was in his element. Crisis situations always made his brain work at maximum efficiency. When the meeting ended, Musk returned to monitoring the situation. The reaction around the world continued to mount. His tweet received 10 million shares in an hour, a platform record. Tesla shares recovered slightly, moving from 12% to 7%, as investors began to realize that the company was stronger than it initially appeared. But the most interesting thing was what was happening in the political sphere. TV channels showed footage from Capitol Hill, where several congressmen had already come forward demanding an immediate investigation into Musk's accusations. On social media, the hashtag #InvestigateSterling became the second most popular after Dash Mask exposed. Musk's phone rang. It was a Washington area code, but not from Sterling's office. Elon Musk listening. Mr. Musk, this is Congressman James Rodriguez, chairman of the House Oversight Committee. I believe we have much to discuss. Musk felt the corners of his lips lift into a slight smile for the first time in this crazy day. Indeed, Congressman, I have several documents that I am sure will be of interest to your committee. Already interested, Mr. Musk. We are monitoring developments. If your accusations against Senator Sterling are confirmed, it will be the biggest corruption scandal of the decade. They will be confirmed, Congressman. Every word. After the call, Musk glanced at his watch. It was 14:22. Less than 4 hours had passed since his interview, and the world was already changing before his eyes. His gaze was drawn to the flurry of activity on the social media screen. A new trend was forming in real time. Thank you, Elon. Ordinary people, electric car owners, clean energy advocates, young people concerned about the future of the planet, supported his decision to take on the system. Not corporations, not politicians, but ordinary citizens tired of seeing their futures sacrificed for short-term profits. Thank you for having the courage to speak the truth when it costs you so much. Thank you, Elon. My home runs entirely on Tesla solar panels. Now I understand why I had to jump through hoops every step of the way. Thank you, Elon. Clean energy, now. As a renewable energy engineer, I've seen our best projects blocked by regulatory issues for years. Now it's all back. Thank you, Elon. The office door opened, and Jen walked in with a tablet in her hands. Sir, you need to see this. David Chang just went live on YouTube. He says, she didn't have time to finish because Musk had already turned on the feed on the big screen. There was David Chang, the former Tesla engineer who had given Musk the documents. He was sitting in front of the camera in an undisclosed location, looking tired but determined. And I want to confirm, every document, every record that I gave to Elon Musk is authentic. I have personally witnessed how promising energy storage technologies were suppressed not because of technical or economic reasons, but because of direct interference of the cartel. Yes, I violated a confidentiality agreement. Yes, I risked my career and even my freedom. But I am an engineer. I vowed to use technology to improve people's lives. And I could not remain silent while I saw that opportunity being taken away from humanity. Now I am forced to hide. The police have already come to my house with a search warrant. My accounts are frozen. My reputation is being attacked by anonymous sources on the internet. But I am ready to answer for my actions because the truth is most important. Today, Elon Musk risked everything to bring this truth to the world. Now it's my turn. Here is the full archive of documents that I am uploading to the public domain. The screen showed Chang demonstrating the process of uploading the archive to multiple independent servers and platforms, ensuring that the information would remain accessible no matter what happened to him. Brave man, Musk said quietly. As are you, sir, replied Jen. Musk shook his head. The difference is that I can afford to take that risk. I have the resources to protect myself. But people like Chang, they risk everything. His phone rang again. This time the number was unfamiliar. Elon Musk listening. Mr. Musk, this is Christine Parker. The journalist's voice was tense, but there was a hint of excitement. I got your offer, and it's very generous. But I have a better idea. I'm listening. I'm launching an independent news project. Completely digital, no corporate sponsors, just pure journalism. And the first material will be a full, uncensored interview with you. A continuation of what was interrupted on GNN. Sometimes the greatest moments in history begin with one person who decides that truth is more important than fear. 1830. SpaceX main conference room, Austin. The conference room, where rocket launches and the colonization of Mars were usually discussed, was now a makeshift studio. Technicians were setting up cameras and lighting, engineers were setting up equipment for a live broadcast, and in the corner, a security team was testing the servers against possible cyber attacks. Elon Musk stood by the picture window, looking out at the setting sun. His phone was constantly buzzing with notifications, but he ignored them, lost in thought about the upcoming confrontation. The conference room door opened and Christine Parker walked in. She looked different, more determined, as if she had lifted the invisible weight of corporate constraints from her shoulders. Everything is ready, she said, approaching Musk. The broadcast will begin in 30 minutes. We have already received confirmation that Senator Sterling has agreed to participate remotely. He agreed? Musk raised an eyebrow. Interesting. Parker smiled. I think he thinks he can control the narrative. The classic tactic is to acknowledge some misunderstandings, but deny the main allegations. Plus, he doesn't want to appear like a coward who avoids answers. A smart move, Musk nodded, but a risky one. He doesn't know what cards we have in our hands. Do they exist? Parker's eyes lit up with professional interest. You'll see, Musk replied mysteriously, like the other 10 million viewers who are already waiting for the broadcast. 10 million. The number seemed incredible for an impromptu internet stream, but that was the impact of the morning interview and the information explosion that followed. Within hours, Parker's spontaneous project, simply called The Truth Stream, had amassed an audience that many networks could only dream of. Amanda Hope, SpaceX's head of legal, approached them with a tablet in her hand. Last briefing before the broadcast, she said sternly. Sterling has brought in a 5-person legal team. They will be on standby to immediately sue for any unsubstantiated claims. I advise you to stick to what we can document. What about new material from David Chang? Musk asked. Authenticity verified by 3 independent experts. Hope nodded. We can use them. Oh, and, she lowered her voice, a tip came in from a source in the Justice Department. They've already opened a preliminary investigation into Sterling. Unofficially, of course, but the wheels are turning. Good news, Musk said. What's up with the market? Tesla shares have recovered to -3%. Investors are divided. Some consider your actions risky, others far-sighted. SpaceX is a private company, so there is no direct blow to it, but the loss of the contract, of course, is painful. Nothing we can't survive, Musk shrugged. Let's get started. The conference room had been transformed. A table with 2 chairs for Musk and Parker had been set up in the middle. On the big screen behind them, a video feed of Senator Sterling was ready to play. Technicians gave final instructions on lighting and sound. Parker sat across from Musk, professionally checking her notes. Without the giant cameras of a TV studio, without an army of producers and strict editorial guidelines, she seemed more relaxed and at the same time more focused. 5 minutes until broadcast, announced the broadcast director. Musk pulled out his phone and quickly scanned the latest news. The situation was unfolding at breakneck speed. The Washington Post had published a news story revealing details of Sterling's meetings with oil tycoons at private resorts. CNN was reporting on Sterling's committee's ties to lobbying groups. Fox News, always more sympathetic to conservative politicians, was trying to shift the focus of the discussion to the radical green agenda and the billionaire's assault on America's energy independence. But the most interesting thing was what was happening on social media. Ordinary Americans shared stories of how they had tried to go solar, but had encountered insurmountable bureaucratic hurdles. Electric car owners told stories of strange tax changes that suddenly made their purchase less profitable. Small entrepreneurs in the green energy sector described how their companies were being strangled by endless audits and regulations. All of these stories merged into a single picture of systemic resistance to the transition to sustainable energy. And this picture was entirely consistent with the documents that Chang provided. 30 seconds until broadcast, said the director's voice. An image of Senator Sterling appeared on the screen behind them. He was sitting in his Washington office, an American flag behind him, projecting the confidence and calm of a seasoned politician. But Musk saw the tension in his eyes. Sterling knew this might be the most important media fight of his career. 10 seconds. 5, 3, 2, 1. Ether. The red light on the main camera lit up, and Christine Parker slipped seamlessly into her role as anchor. Professional, confident, but with a distinct edge to her voice that had been missing from her morning broadcast on GNN. Good evening, America. I'm Christine Parker, and this is The Truth Stream, a new platform for open and uncompromising debate. This morning, my interview with Elon Musk on GNN was abruptly interrupted when he began talking about a supposed conspiracy against renewable energy. It sparked an unprecedented wave of discussion and demanded more. She paused, letting viewers take in the historic moment, the first independent internet broadcast that could compete with traditional media giants. Today we have with us Elon Musk, the CEO of Tesla and SpaceX, and Senator William Sterling, the chairman of the House Energy Committee, which is at the center of these allegations. Gentlemen, thank you for agreeing to this conversation. Thank you for the invitation, Christine, Musk replied. I welcome the opportunity to clear up this unpleasant situation, Sterling said from the screen, his voice sounding confident and slightly condescending. Parker looked directly into the camera. Let's start with the obvious question. Mr. Musk, you have made extremely serious allegations against Senator Sterling and several major corporations. You claim that there is an organized conspiracy to suppress the development of renewable energy. What prompted you to make these allegations now? Musk sat up straight in his chair, his face serious. This morning I received documents from former Tesla engineer David Chang. These documents, independently verified as authentic, reveal a systematic campaign to block clean energy technologies. A campaign coordinated by oil companies, traditional automakers, and unfortunately politicians, including Senator Sterling. Absurd, Sterling interjected from the screen. These are baseless accusations based on half-truths and bits taken out of context. Mr. Musk is angry that his companies are facing natural competition and is trying to create a conspiracy theory to justify his business problems. Parker turned to the screen. Senator Sterling, what do you make of the internal ExxonMobil presentation that described Tesla as an existential threat that needed to be neutralized through political channels? This document has already been corroborated by several former ExxonMobil employees. Sterling hesitated for a moment, but quickly regained his composure. I have nothing to do with the internal documents of private companies, and the word neutralize can mean many things, from fair competition to adapting one's own business models. This is standard corporate language, nothing more. What about the audio recording of your conversation with the head of an oil industry lobby group? Parker continued. I quote, 20% offshore, as usual. Just make sure this bill doesn't pass. That was about the bill to expand tax credits for electric vehicles, wasn't it? Sterling's face tightened. This post, if it exists at all, is taken out of context. I regularly communicate with representatives of all industries, from oil to renewable energy. It is part of my job as the committee chair. Musk listened calmly to this exchange, then intervened. Senator, let's be frank. This morning, you offered me a deal. $17 billion in government funding for SpaceX in exchange for my silence about your energy strategy. That's a fact. And as I understand it, you've offered similar deals to many people. That's an absolute lie, Sterling flared up. You can't prove these slanderous statements. Musk just smiled slightly and pulled out his phone. Actually, I can. He tapped the screen, and Sterling's voice came over the airwaves. Listen to me carefully, Musk. You have 1 hour to issue a rebuttal. Say that your accusations were based on false information, that you overreacted. Apologize to the American people for creating panic. And then maybe we can minimize the damage for all of us. Then Musk's voice sounded, or what? And again, Sterling, or you'll see what happens when you go against the system. Your companies, your reputation, your dreams of Mars, all of it can disappear very quickly. One call to the SEC about market manipulation, one investigation by the IRS, one congressional hearing about the safety of your technology. Are you sure you're ready for that? There was absolute silence in the studio. Sterling's face on screen was frozen in an expression of shock and fury. I recorded our conversation this morning, Senator, Musk said calmly. In the state of Texas, it only takes one participant in a conversation for the recording to be legal. And by the way, I've already sent the full version to the Justice Department. You're distorting the context, Sterling croaked, his face turning pale. I was trying to protect you from the consequences of your rash statements. Protect? Musk raised an eyebrow. By threatening to use government agencies against my companies? That's an interesting form of protection. Parker, maintaining a professional expression but not hiding her surprise, turned to the screen. Senator Sterling, how do you explain this recording? Sterling was clearly struggling to keep his composure. There was movement behind him. Perhaps his lawyers and advisors discussed a strategy to salvage the situation. I spoke to Mr. Musk as a partner, he said finally. Perhaps my words came out harsher than I intended, but the gist of the conversation was that making uninformed accusations could destabilize the energy sector, which would have serious consequences for the country's economy. And for your personal financial well-being, right? Musk asked. What do you mean? Sterling asked sharply. Of course, I'm talking about your private investment company, Sterling Global Investments, which owns over $70 million worth of shares in 5 of the largest oil corporations. A company that you officially transferred control to your brother, but which you continue to control, in fact, through a series of offshore trusts. If Sterling had looked worried before, now he looked shocked. His mouth was open, but no words came out. Parker, fully embracing her role as an impartial but tough moderator, continued the offensive. Senator, did you really plan to introduce a new energy strategy today that would effectively block the development of renewable energy sources for the next decade? Sterling finally got a hold of himself. Our energy strategy is balanced and takes into account all aspects of national security and economic development. We cannot afford an adventurous transition to untested technologies at the whim of tech billionaires. Unproven? Musk interjected, his voice filled with genuine passion. Solar panels, wind turbines, electric cars. These are all working, cost-effective technologies. They don't need decades of additional testing. They need fair competition. But your sponsors are afraid of that competition because they know they'll lose. You're oversimplifying complex issues, Sterling countered, trying to regain the initiative. The energy transition must be gradual, taking into account the millions of jobs in traditional industries. What about Project Edison 2? Musk asked, the name clearly catching Sterling off guard. Tesla's experimental batteries with triple the energy density. The technology that could make electric cars cheaper and more efficient than their gasoline counterparts, even without government as subsidies. The project that ran into some strange regulatory troubles right after your meeting with oil companies in Aspen last fall. Sterling was silent for a second too long, long enough for millions of viewers to pick up on his confusion. I'm not aware of every technology project, he finally managed to say, and I categorically deny any interference in regulatory processes with the aim of blocking innovation. Parker sensed the moment to change tactics. Okay, let's shift the focus of the discussion. Mr. Musk, you are risking a lot by making these accusations. SpaceX has lost a major government contract, Tesla's stock has dropped, and you could be facing all sorts of lawsuits. Why did you decide to take such a risk? Musk thought for a moment, his face turning serious. You know, when I founded SpaceX, many believed that a private company could not compete with government space agencies. When I invested all my money in Tesla, experts said that electric cars would never become widespread. I am used to proving that the impossible is possible. He paused. But in the case of the energy transition, I encountered a different kind of barrier. Not technological limitations, not the laws of physics, but deliberate human resistance. A system that is designed to protect the old and block the new. And I could not remain silent when I saw evidence of how this was happening. Sterling snorted in irritation on screen. Nice speech, Musk, but in the real world... In the real world, Senator, Musk interrupted, people are dying from air pollution. Ecosystems are collapsing. Entire regions are becoming uninhabitable due to climate change. And all the while, the technologies that could solve these problems are being deliberately held back for the sake of the profits of a few corporations and the political influence of people like you. You're a demagogue, Sterling said through gritted teeth, using emotional arguments instead of facts. Here's a fact, Musk replied calmly. This morning, your committee was going to vote on a package that would have increased subsidies to the oil industry by $42 billion while simultaneously eliminating tax breaks for solar power. This is despite the fact that solar power is already cheaper than fossil fuels in many places. How can this be explained except by systemic corruption? Parker intervened, sensing the discussion was reaching a climax. Senator Sterling, was your committee planning such action today? Sterling looked cornered, clearly considering his options, knowing that any answer could be used against him. Our committee is considering many proposals, he said finally. Some of them involve temporary support for traditional energy to ensure stability during the transition period. But context matters, and context, Musk repeated. Let's talk about context. That your campaign raised $12 million from energy companies. That your brother serves on the boards of 2 oil companies. That you'll be getting a consulting contract worth over $30 million after you leave politics. That's context. At that moment, something unexpected happened. Someone off camera passed Sterling a note. He read it, and his face changed from anger to something resembling panic. I must take a break, he said suddenly. Urgent state affairs have come up. What a coincidence, Parker noted. As soon as the conversation turned to financial matters, you had urgent business to attend to. That's an inappropriate comment, Sterling snapped. He was interrupted by a sudden noise off camera. Someone had entered his office, and Sterling turned, apparently surprised by the intrusion. Although Sterling's microphone picked up only fragments, the millions of viewers clearly heard the phrase Department of Justice and preliminary investigation. Sterling's face froze. He turned back to the camera. I really need to go. It's a technical issue. And his image disappeared from the screen. There was a moment of silence in the studio. Parker and Musk exchanged looks of disbelief and surprise. Well, Parker said finally, turning to the camera, it appears Senator Sterling has encountered an emergency, but our conversation continues. Mr. Musk, what do you think just happened? Musk shook his head. I would prefer not to speculate, but it seems the wheels of justice are turning faster than anyone expected. Speaking of justice, Parker continued, what's next? You've uncovered information about the alleged conspiracy. You've presented evidence. But what does that mean for the future of U.S. energy policy? Musk relaxed a little in his chair, his face becoming more animated as he moved from accusations to a vision of the future, a territory where he had always felt comfortable. I hope this will be a wake-up call, not just for politicians and regulators, but for everyday Americans. For too long, we have allowed narrow corporate interests to dictate our technological development. It is time to return the future to the hands of those who are actually building it. That sounds inspiring, but pretty abstract, Parker said. What specific changes would you like to see? First of all, full transparency of lobbying activities. Every dollar that companies spend on influencing politicians should be public. Secondly, reform of the regulatory system, especially in the energy sector. It should be based on objective scientific data, not on political connections. Thirdly, equal rules of the game for all technologies. Let solar panels, wind generators, electric cars compete with oil and gas fairly, without hidden subsidies and barriers. Parker nodded, then asked the question that millions of viewers were probably wondering. What about you personally and your companies? You understand that you have made powerful enemies. How do you plan to defend yourself from the inevitable backlash? Musk smiled, not with self-confidence, but rather with the determination of a man ready to fight. SpaceX and Tesla have weathered worse storms. We will continue to do what we do best, create revolutionary technologies. And I believe the American people will now see the true picture and support companies that are truly working for a better future. At that moment, Parker's assistant handed her a note. She read it and her eyebrows rose in surprise. Mr. Musk, I just had some information that might interest you. According to sources in Washington, Senator Sterling just announced that he is temporarily stepping down as chairman of the Energy Committee. The official reason is to focus on investigating unsubstantiated allegations. Musk nodded slightly but did not look triumphant. This is just the beginning, he said quietly. The system will be protected by all available means. Parker looked directly into the camera. We are receiving information that shares of the largest oil companies mentioned in the documents have started to fall sharply in the after-hours session. At the same time, Tesla shares are recovering, having already returned to the morning values. It seems that the market draws its conclusions faster than politicians. The screen behind them suddenly filled with activity, charts showing oil stocks falling while Tesla rose. But even more interesting was the news ticker at the bottom of the screen. Breaking, Justice confirms investigation into alleged corruption scheme in energy sector. Parker quickly turned on her earpiece, receiving information from the producers. Right now I am receiving confirmation that the Attorney General will issue a statement in an hour. Sources say that several high-ranking oil company officials have already approached the authorities with an offer to cooperate in exchange for immunity. Mr. Musk, it seems that your accusations have triggered a veritable avalanche. Musk looked both pleased and serious. Do you know what the saddest thing about this situation is? We have lost years, perhaps decades, of progress because of artificial barriers. Technologies that could already provide the world with clean energy have been deliberately suppressed. Scientists and engineers who were developing revolutionary solutions have been silenced or forced to change their direction. How is David Chang? Parker asked. Like David and hundreds of others whose names we may never know. Musk nodded. But the good news is, the technology hasn't disappeared. It's still there, just biding its time. He sat up straight in his chair, and there was that gleam in his eyes that made investors believe in his most daring projects. And I want to take this moment to make a special announcement. Tesla is reactivating the Edison 2 project. Moreover, we are opening up a significant portion of our energy storage patents to all companies willing to develop clean energy. Not just a promise not to sue for patent use, as we have done in the past, but a completely open access to technologies that can change the world. There was silence in the studio. Parker looked genuinely surprised. You're talking about patents worth billions of dollars. Yes, Musk said simply. But what good is technology ownership if the planet becomes uninhabitable? I've always said that Tesla's mission is to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy. Today, we're removing another barrier to that. A new message appeared on the screen behind them. Breaking. Tesla awards patents for revolutionary energy storage technology. Parker glanced at her tablet, where live comments from viewers were displayed. The reaction to your announcement has been immediate and overwhelming, Mr. Musk. Social media is exploding, with the hashtag #ShockCleanEnergyRevolution already trending. But there is also criticism. Some say opening up the patents could undermine Tesla's competitive advantage. Tesla's competitive advantage isn't in patents, Musk said. It's in our ability to innovate faster than anyone else. By the time other companies have mastered these technologies, we'll already be working on the next generation of solutions. He paused as if weighing his next words. But it's not just about business. Today I saw how a system designed to protect the status quo nearly destroyed the future of clean energy. I can't guarantee that such attempts won't happen again. But now that the technology is owned by everyone, it will be much harder to suppress. The assistant handed Parker the note again. She quickly scanned it and looked straight into the camera. Ladies and gentlemen, we have just received word that David Chang, the engineer who provided the documents to Mr. Musk, has agreed to join our broadcast. He is in a secure location and is available to answer some questions. The face of David Chang appeared on the screen, an Asian man in his 40s with tired but determined eyes. Mr. Chang, thank you for joining us, Parker began. Do you realize the uproar you've caused by handing over these documents to Mr. Musk? Chang nodded. Yes, and I am ready to take responsibility for my actions. I violated the confidentiality agreement, but I could not remain silent, seeing how technologies capable of changing the world for the better are being artificially blocked. Tell us about Project Edison 2, Parker asked. What makes this technology so revolutionary that it was systemically suppressed? Chang took a moment to collect his thoughts. Edison 2 is not just an improvement on existing batteries. It is a fundamentally new approach to energy storage, combining solid-state cells with semiconductor components. In laboratory conditions, we have achieved an energy density of 450 watt-hours per kilogram, almost 3 times higher than the best commercial batteries today. If mass-produced, this technology could reduce the cost of electric cars to the level of conventional cars even without subsidies and triple the effective driving range. So, what happened to the project? Parker asked. First, strange regulatory checks. Then, sudden funding problems. Research grants that were almost approved were mysteriously canceled. Key team members were poached by other companies, offering huge amounts of money for non-innovative work. It all looked like random coincidences until I got access to internal documents that revealed a coordinated campaign against us. Musk joined the conversation. David, I want you to know that the project is not dead. We are resuming work, and I hope that you will agree to lead it. Chang's face lit up. Seriously? But there are legal obstacles, contracts, which will now be viewed in a completely different light, Musk interrupted, especially given the investigation that's underway. So what do you think? Yes, of course, Chang looked shocked and inspired at the same time. This is what I risked everything for. Parker turned to the camera. Today we witnessed events that could change the trajectory of energy policy in the United States and perhaps the world. From the exposure of an alleged conspiracy against renewable energy to Tesla's unprecedented move to open up key patents. But the most important question is, what does this mean for everyday Americans? She turned to Musk. If everything you say is confirmed and regulatory barriers are removed, how soon will we see real changes in our daily lives? Musk thought for a moment. Faster than many people think. The technology already exists. Production capacity can be scaled up in a few years. With the right political support, or at least the absence of active resistance, we could see radical changes in the energy landscape within 5 years. Electric cars could become cheaper than gasoline cars. Solar roofs could become the norm, not a luxury. Home batteries could provide energy independence for millions of families. It sounds almost utopian, Parker noted. No, Musk said with unexpected firmness. Utopia is fantasy. What I'm talking about is an engineering reality, backed by working prototypes and mathematical calculations. The only thing that stood in the way was not technical limitations, but human resistance. A new message appeared on the screen behind them. U.S. Energy Secretary announces emergency review of energy strategy in light of new circumstances. Parker quickly read the message and smiled. The wheels seem to be turning even faster. The Energy Secretary has just announced a complete overhaul of the national energy strategy in light of today's revelations. Musk nodded, but there was no triumph in his gaze. More of a quiet determination. This is only the beginning of a long journey. The forces interested in maintaining the status quo will not give up without a fight. There will be attempts to discredit the evidence, blur the investigation, and divert public attention to other topics. We must be prepared for this. And you are prepared to continue this fight, despite the risk to your company's and personal reputation? Parker asked. Musk looked directly into the camera, as if he was addressing not Parker, but the millions of viewers on the other side of the screen. You know, when I founded SpaceX, a lot of people asked me, why? Why risk a fortune on a crazy dream about Mars? My answer has always been simple. Because it's important. Because a future in which humanity becomes a multiplanetary species is better than a future in which we are confined to one planet. He paused, his eyes burning with that inner fire that made people believe in his most daring projects. Today, I face a similar choice. I can focus only on Mars, take the money from those who offer it, and turn a blind eye to what is happening here on Earth. Or I can fight for both futures at once, for a clean, sustainable Earth, and for humanity among the stars. And you know what? I choose both, because one without the other is meaningless. The studio was silent, except for the soft hum of the equipment. No one, not Parker or the technical staff, was in a hurry to disturb the moment when one of the most powerful people on the planet laid bare his true motives in front of millions of viewers. Finally, Parker summed it up gently. Today began a day that could have been the end of hopes for a rapid transition to clean energy. Instead, thanks to the courage of one engineer and the determination of a man who could have simply taken the money and kept quiet, it could be a new beginning. The beginning of a world where technology serves humanity, not the interests of a select few. She turned to the camera for her final words. I'm Christine Parker, and this was The Truth Stream, the first broadcast, but I promise you, not the last. Truth has power, and today we saw that power in action. The red light on the camera went out, signaling the end of the broadcast. But the broadcast continued online, where millions of people around the world continued to watch, comment, and share. What had started with a single interview that morning had become a global blaze, illuminating the dark corners of a system that had for too long protected the status quo at the expense of the future. Musk stood up, removing the microphone. His phone vibrated with notifications, calls, messages. The world was reacting to what had just happened, and the reaction was going to be wild, controversial, and possibly historic. What now? Parker asked, also rising. Musk glanced at the evening sky outside the conference room window, a deep Texas blue where the first stars were already appearing. Now? He smiled, that special smile that appeared only in moments of the most daring decisions. Now we are building the future, the real future, without compromises and half measures. And I invite everyone to join. An incoming call appeared on his phone, a number that began with the White House area code.